Most people buy a cabin in the mountains for peace. But U.S. Army veteran Jake Turner bought his for silence. After the war took his sleep, his friends, and almost his sanity, he paid for an abandoned, half-rotted cabin deep in the forest, so isolated that even hunters avoided it. When U.S. Army veteran Cole Branson bought a collapsing mountain cabin for just $600, everyone laughed. It's haunted, they warned. No one stays there longer than a night. Hikers claimed they heard whispers from the chimney. Hunters swore they saw lights flickering inside. Even when the place was abandoned, Jake didn't believe in ghosts. He only believed in his K-9 partner, Shadow, the only companion who had followed him through war and back. But on the first night, Shadow refused to enter the cabin. He stood frozen, staring at the attic window. Where something moved, Cole thought it was just rodents. Or the wind. He was wrong. The real terror began when Shadow scratched at a loose floorboard and uncovered a hidden compartment. A secret no one in that town had dared to open for 40 years. Cole thought he bought silence. What he got was a truth darker than the forest itself. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The old pickup rumbled to a stop as U.S. Army veteran Cole Mercer stepped out into the biting winter air. Snow crunched beneath his boots, and Shadow, his loyal K-9 partner, jumped down beside him, ears perked, tail stiff. Before them stood the cabin he'd bought for only $600, a crooked, moss-covered structure leaning tiredly between tall pines. Its wooden porch sagging like it carried decades of secrets. Local townsfolk had warned him. That cabin isn't abandoned. It's haunted. But Cole didn't scare easily. Not after what he'd faced in combat. He simply needed solitude, a place far from noise, far from memories he didn't want to relive. Yet the moment he took his first step toward the cabin, Shadow froze. The dog's fur bristled along his spine, and a low growl vibrated from his chest. Cole frowned. Shadow never reacted without reason. "Easy, boy," Cole murmured, though a shiver worked its way up his own spine. There was something unsettling about the way the wind seemed to dodge the cabin, how the trees bent inward as if watching. Cole gripped Shadow's collar gently. "It's just an old house," he whispered. But deep down, he wasn't entirely sure. That night, the cabin felt colder than the snow outside. Cole fed logs into the stone fireplace, but the flames only flickered weakly, as if the room itself was swallowing the heat. Shadow paced in tight circles, nose low, ears twitching at sounds Cole couldn't hear. Cole tried to settle into the creaky wooden chair by the window, but Shadow suddenly snapped his head toward the far corner of the room, the darkest one. He growled, deep and warning, the fur along his neck rising. Cole followed his gaze. Nothing but shadows. A moment later, a faint thump echoed from the back room. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. Cole stiffened. "Probably the wood contracting," he muttered, though his words felt thin. Shadow walked toward the sound, tail rigid, nose pressed to the floor. He sniffed once, then began scratching frantically at the wooden planks, whining as if something beneath them was alive. Cole hurried over, placing a hand on the dog's back. "Shadow, stop." But Shadow refused. His scratching grew more desperate, nails clicking sharply in the quiet cabin. Another sound followed, this time a creak, almost like a footstep directly above them. Cole's breath hitched. The roof was too old for anyone to be up there. Slowly, the cabin's temperature dropped again, the air tightening around Cole's lungs. Something was wrong, and Shadow sensed it first. The Shadow's claws scraped harder against the floor until one of the wooden planks shifted with a dull clunk. Cole froze. The board didn't just loosen, it lifted, as if pushed from underneath. A cold ripple crawled through his chest. Slowly, he crouched beside Shadow, who stepped back but kept his eyes locked on the opening. Cole slid his fingers under the edge and pried the plank up. Dust billowed out, carrying a stale, metallic smell, old, untouched, forgotten. Beneath the floor lay a narrow, hollow space, barely large enough for a shoebox. But inside it rested something heavier, something wrapped in a rotting strip of canvas cloth. Carefully, Cole reached down and pulled it out. The cloth crumbled like ashes in his hands, revealing a small military-grade metal box. Thick, cold, the kind used decades ago to store ammunition or personal effects. but this one had strange black scorch marks along the edges. Burn marks. And carved into the metal lid were rough symbols. Uneven, jagged lines that didn't look like anything military at all. Shadow whined, taking a step back, tail tucked. He wasn't afraid of much, but whatever was in that box stirred something primal in him. Cole ran his thumb across the carvings, shivering at how icy the metal felt despite the fire behind him. "What in the world?" he whispered. Then something slipped from the torn canvas, a dog tag. Not his. Not even from his era. Cole picked it up, brushing away the grime. Sergeant Daniel Crow, K9 Unit. He didn't recognize the name. But Shadow sniffed the tag and growled softly, like he sensed a story buried deep beneath the cabin. Cole stared at the box, pulse rising. Someone hid this on purpose. And someone wanted it to stay hidden. The next morning, Cole drove into town with the dog tag tucked safely in his jacket. Shadow sat rigid in the passenger seat, eyes fixed on the road ahead, as if he already knew this trip wasn't ordinary. Snow dusted the roofs of the small shops, and a few locals stood outside the diner, sipping coffee and watching Cole pull up. Inside, the bell above the door jingled weakly. Sheriff Avery, an older man with tired eyes and a badge that had clearly seen decades of service, looked up from his stool. "You're the veteran who bought the Crow cabin," he said, not as a question, but a quiet statement. Cole frowned. "Crow cabin." Avery motioned for him to sit. Cole slid into the booth and placed the dog tag on the table. The sheriff's expression hardened instantly. He picked it up with trembling fingers. "Where did you find this?" "Under the floor," Cole said. "Hidden." The sheriff let out a slow breath, as if releasing years of buried memories. 30 years ago, Sergeant Daniel Crow lived in that cabin with his K9 partner. One night, the dog went wild, howling, scratching, trying to break through the floorboards. Nobody knew why. The next day, Crow vanished. So did the dog. The cabin was boarded up, sold cheap. But no one stayed. Cole felt a chill crawl up his spine. Shadow nudged the tag gently with his nose, then looked toward the door. Toward the mountain. It was as if he already knew the past wasn't finished with them. That night, a brutal storm rolled over the mountains, trapping Cole and Shadow inside the cabin. Wind slammed against the walls, rattling the windows like fists pounding to be let in. The fire flickered violently, sending shadows dancing across the ceiling. Cole tried to read the faded journal pages he'd found beside the metal box, but the words kept blurring, his mind too alert, too uneasy. Shadow stood at the center of the room, rigid as stone, ears pinned forward. The dog's breathing grew shallow, controlled, the way he behaved before a threat. Cole noticed it immediately. "What is it, boy?" he whispered. Then bang. A thunderous crack echoed beneath the floorboards. Cole jerked to his feet. That wasn't the storm. That came from below the cabin. Shadow lunged toward the sound, barking with a fierceness Cole had heard only in combat zones. His paws slammed against the same spot he had uncovered earlier. The wooden planks trembled beneath him as if something inside the ground was pushing upward. Another bang. This one harder. Closer. The metal box, still sitting on the table, rattled sharply, its lid vibrating as if something inside was clawing to get out. Cole backed away, heart hammering. The carvings on the lid looked darker now, almost burned fresh. The air grew icy cold, each breath turning white. Shadow barked again, warning, desperate. Whatever had taken Sergeant Crow, whatever had driven his K9 mad, it was waking up. Right under Cole's feet, the rattling stopped as suddenly as it started. The cabin fell into a suffocating silence, broken only by Shadow's low growl. Cole swallowed hard and stepped toward the table. His hand trembled as he unlatched the metal box. The lid creaked open. Inside lay a weathered journal, a folded uniform patch, and a blood-stained collar, small, cracked, bearing the name Ranger. Shadow sniffed it, then whimpered softly, ears lowered. Cole's chest tightened that he opened the journal. The final entry was shaky, written in a soldier's desperation. "Ranger tried to save me. I don't deserve to leave. If someone finds this, forgive him. He only wanted to protect." Cole exhaled, realization hitting him with the weight of a decade. Sergeant Crow hadn't been haunted by ghosts. He had been haunted by grief. He'd sealed his partner's memory beneath the floor, unable to face the loss. Shadow nudged the collar again, laying his head gently beside it, honoring a dog he'd never met. Cole closed the journal softly. You never went mad, he whispered to Ranger's spirit. You were a hero. The storm eased outside. For the first time since arriving, the cabin felt warm. Shadow curled beside Cole as dawn broke through the trees, a new beginning for both of them.